I thought cheating on my husband while he built our future would be a thrill, until he found my messages, finished the house, and sold it without a word, leaving me with nothing. I was sleeping with my contractor while my husband worked 16-hour days to pay for our dream house. The irony wasn't lost on me even then, but I didn't care. David was pouring everything into building me the home I'd sketched on napkins since we were dating, and I was repaying him by screwing the man installing our kitchen cabinets. It started because David was never around anymore. He'd taken on extra consulting projects to cover the construction costs, working until midnight most nights. Meanwhile, I was at the build site every day, making decisions about tile and fixtures and paint colors. That's how I met Connor. Connor was the kind of man David wasn't. Rough hands, tight t-shirts, the kind of confidence that comes from building things with your bare hands. He flirted from day one, calling me gorgeous when David wasn't around, finding excuses to brush past me in the unfinished hallways. "Your husband's a lucky man," he'd say, installing the crown molding in what would be our master bedroom. "Hope he knows what he's got." I started dressing up for construction site visits. Wore my tightest jeans, low-cut tops, perfume that would linger after I left. Told myself I was just having fun, that it felt good to be noticed by someone who wasn't buried in spreadsheets and client calls. David was so exhausted he barely looked at me anymore. We'd have these conversations about countertop materials while he answered emails, his attention split between me and work. I felt invisible in my own relationship while this stranger made me feel like the most beautiful woman alive. The first time Connor kissed me was in our future living room, surrounded by sawdust and exposed wiring. I'd brought him coffee and he'd grabbed my wrist, pulled me close, pressed his mouth to mine hard enough to bruise. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he said against my lips. I should have stopped it there. Should have transferred contractors, told David something. Instead, I kissed him back and felt more alive than I had in months. The affair escalated quickly after that. Connor would text me photos of his work progress, but really he was just finding excuses to get me back to the house. We'd have sex on the subflooring where David and I were supposed to make love as homeowners. On the kitchen island David had custom designed for me. In the master shower that was meant to be our private sanctuary. Every surface of my dream house became tainted with my betrayal, but I was too intoxicated by the attention to care. Connor made me feel desired, spontaneous, young. David made me feel like a line item in his project management software. I got careless fast. Started spending hours at the construction site when David thought I was running errands. Would come home with sawdust in my hair and construction dirt on my clothes, claiming I'd been checking on progress. David was too tired and trusting to question it. Connor and I would have sex in the afternoon and I'd go home to David making dinner, asking about my day. I'd lie to his face while he served me food he'd picked up between client calls, too exhausted to cook but still trying to take care of me. "The house is looking amazing," I tell him. Connor says we're ahead of schedule. David would smile, so proud of the surprise he was building me. "I can't wait for you to see the finished master bath. The tile work is incredible." Meanwhile, I'd been bent over that same vanity 3 hours earlier, biting my lip to keep from screaming Connor's name. The deception became addictive. I loved having this secret, this part of my life that was just mine. David was always talking about our house, our future, our plans. Connor never mentioned the future. He just wanted me, in the moment, no strings attached. I started fantasizing about leaving David for Connor. Imagined what it would be like to be with someone who worked with his hands, who wasn't always checking his phone during dinner. Someone who grabbed me like he needed me instead of scheduling sex around his project deadlines. But Connor never talked about us having a real relationship. Never mentioned meeting my friends or going on actual dates. I told myself he was just being discreet until the house was finished. That he didn't want to complicate the job. The sex was incredible, but looking back, it was also completely empty. Connor knew nothing about me beyond my body. Never asked about my job, my dreams, my fears. David could recite my coffee order, my favorite movies, the story behind every scar on my body. Connor couldn't even remember my middle name. But Connor made me feel like a woman instead of a wife, so I kept going back. The house was nearly finished when everything imploded. Connor had been texting me more frequently, getting bolder. Sending photos of his body, explicit messages about what he wanted to do to me in our almost completed bedroom. I was at work when David called, his voice strange and flat. "We need to talk when you get home." My stomach dropped, but I told myself it could be about anything. Maybe a problem with the final inspection. Maybe he decided to take that promotion in Seattle. Anything except what I knew it actually was. I came home to find David sitting at our kitchen table with my phone in his hands. My old phone, the one I thought I'd factory reset before upgrading. Apparently I'd only deleted the messages, not cleared the backup. 3 months of explicit texts with Connor. Photos. Videos. Plans to meet at the house. Me complaining about David being boring. Me talking about Connor's body. Everything. How long? David asked without looking up. I tried to lie, but he'd already seen it all. Every detail, every betrayal, time-stamped and documented. He'd read messages where I'd mocked him for working so hard while I was with another man in the house he was working so hard to build for me. Since February, I whispered. David nodded slowly. So 3 months. The entire time I've been working myself to death to finish your dream house, you've been cheating with the contractor. The way he said your dream house instead of our dream house should have warned me what was coming. David left that night. Took a suitcase and went to his brother's place. I spent the next 3 days calling him, texting him, begging him to come home so we could work through this. He responded once, "My lawyer will be in touch." I thought I still had time to fix things. Thought maybe when he saw the finished house, remembered all the dreams we'd shared, he'd forgive me. The house was supposed to be completed in 2 weeks. Our new beginning. I drove to the construction site that Thursday, expecting to find Connor and the crew putting finishing touches on our dream. Instead, I found a sold sign in the front yard and Connor loading his tools into his truck. "What's going on?" I asked him, my voice shaking. Connor barely looked at me. "Job's done. New owners take possession Monday." "New owners? What are you talking about?" "Your husband sold it. To the Hendersons from across the street. They'd been wanting to upgrade for years, made him an offer he couldn't refuse." The words didn't make sense. "He can't sell our house. We haven't even moved in yet." Connor shrugged. "It was in his name. Apparently you weren't on the deed." That's when I understood. David had been planning this house for 2 years, but he'd never added me to the paperwork. At the time, I thought it was just easier since he was handling all the financing. Now I realized it was the smartest thing he'd ever done. I'd spent months watching my dream house come together, planning which room would be my office, where we'd put the Christmas tree, how I'd decorate the master bedroom. I'd imagined growing old in those rooms, hosting dinner parties in that kitchen, maybe even raising kids in those bedrooms. David had given all of that to strangers. Connor finished loading his truck while I stood there in shock. "For what it's worth," he said, not looking at me, "your husband seems like a good guy. Probably didn't deserve what we did." Then he drove away without another word. I never saw him again. The divorce was swift and brutal. David had documentation of everything. My affair, his financial contribution to the house, my complete lack of legal claim to any of it. He built my dream house and sold it for a profit that I'd never see a penny of. I lost half our friends in the divorce. The other half slowly drifted away when they realized I was the villain in this story. Hard to maintain sympathy for the woman who cheated while her husband worked himself to exhaustion building her a house. My family was furious when they found out what I'd done. My sister, who'd been planning to help me decorate the new house, stopped speaking to me entirely. My parents invited David to Christmas instead of me. Dating became impossible. Our town was small enough that everyone knew the story. I was the woman who'd cheated with the contractor while her husband built her dream house. The betrayal was so perfectly cruel that people shared it like a cautionary tale. I moved into a rental apartment across town, as far from our old neighborhood as I could get. But I still drove past the house sometimes, torturing myself with glimpses of the life I'd thrown away. The Hendersons had painted the front door blue instead of the red I'd chosen. They'd added different landscaping, installed a swing set in the backyard. They were living the life I'd imagined, in the house my husband had built with love I'd repaid with betrayal. Connor had been right about one thing: David was a good guy. Too good for someone like me. He poured his heart into building something beautiful for us, and I destroyed it from the inside while he wasn't looking. I heard through mutual friends that David was dating someone new. A teacher named Rachel who appreciated the little things he did, who didn't take his devotion for granted. They were talking about buying a house together. Something smaller, more modest, but built on a foundation of actual trust. Meanwhile, I was alone in my apartment, scrolling through Zillow listings I couldn't afford, wondering how I'd mistaken good sex for happiness and destroyed the only man who'd ever loved me enough to build me a dream. The worst part was knowing that David had finished the house after he found out about the affair. Had gone to work every day, managed the final details, made sure everything was perfect before he sold it. He'd completed his promise to me even after I'd broken every promise I'd ever made to him. I kept the screenshots he'd forwarded me of my text messages with Connor. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of how ugly I'd become. How I'd mocked David's exhaustion while he killed himself for me. How I'd planned to betray him in our marital bed before we'd even slept in it. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I'd just talked to David about feeling neglected. If I'd asked him to work fewer hours, or suggested we take a vacation, or tried couples therapy. But that would have required me to be a partner instead of a cheater. I'd wanted excitement more than I'd wanted my marriage. Wanted to feel desired more than I'd wanted to be deserving. Wanted the thrill of the affair more than I'd wanted the security of home. Now I had none of it. No husband, no house, no Connor, no respect from anyone who knew the truth. Just a studio apartment and the memory of watching strangers move into the house that should have been mine. The dream house became a monument to everything I'd lost and everything I'd never deserved in the first place.